Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to look at modifiers. So with a cube selected, if you look at the properties panel on the side, you'll see one icon that looks like a wrench. That's the modifiers properties. So click on the modifiers properties and then you will see a drop down menu add modifier. So if you click this drop down, you'll see all the different kinds of modifiers that you can add. We are not going to go through all of them. I just want to show you a couple of them that's very commonly used in Blender. So let's start with the array modifier. So now instantly you can see something happen, and here in the properties on the side you can actually change the properties of this modifier, so we can increase the factor or this offset factor. So if I just slide this to the side, you can see now we have got 2 cubes. I can also increase the count to increase the count of cubes. Now if I go into edit mode, now with this modifier applied, we technically only have one object. So these are just copies that this modifier is creating. So let's say we go into face select mode by pressing 3 and we select the top face. Then we are going to do inset by pressing I is to inset like that, and let's extrude that. Press E and extrude that. So as you can see, that's being copied basically using this array modifier. Once you are happy with your array, you can also apply the modifier. So you click on this drop down, click on apply, and now this is one brand new object. So I can select it, press tab, and now I can see I can maybe insert this face, extrude this face, and it won't affect any other object because this is all one object now. So a very handy thing where this comes in is when creating stairs or steps. So let's delete and create a brand new cube. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to press S and Z to just scale that down so it's a bit flat. And then I want to scale this again. And this time on the x-axis to just create like a one step for a staircase. And let's add an array modifier again, and let's increase the count to maybe around 10 like so. And then we want to increase the factor on the x-axis just slightly. So there's a slight little gap between them. And then we can also increase either the X or the Z axis. So this time I'm going to slide the Z axis over, and there we have some easy steps or stairs. So you can obviously play with a X amount to see if you want to have them overlap like that, or you can increase it so they less overlapping, and you can play around with these settings. So let's create some details on the front. So I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode, and I want to insert this face. Now if we press I to insert this, you'll see it's doing something weird. It's not creating an inset equally. You can see this side face is not the same as this top face. And that's because we didn't apply the scale, which is always important to do. So let's undo that and let's go out of edit mode, back to object mode. And with this object selected, press N November, and remember we have to apply the scale because currently the scale is not 111. So with the object selected, press Ctrl A and then apply this scale. So now you can see it's all set to 111. And now if we go back into edit mode and we select this face, we press I. Now you can see that inset is working much better now. I can see the spaces around the face is equal. And that's the reason why you need to always apply the scale when you do scale adjustments. So now I can create an extrude. So with the face selected, press E, and then let's just move that in slightly, and I can see that. And now I can see that it's happening on all the steps. So you only have to do it on one, and it's gonna copy paste onto the array like that. So once you're happy with your staircase, you can now go into your array. You can make more changes here. I can increase the count maybe for one more stairs, or I can change the offset, or I can change the height. And once you're happy with your model or with your array, you can always apply it. Just remember, once you apply it, you cannot make any changes to the array anymore. So now I can go and I can only change this one face. Let's extrude that one face, and it's not going to affect others because it's basically one object now. So let's delete that. Next, we are going to look at the bevel modifier. Let's create a cube, and this time I'm going to add modifier and I'm going to select bevel. So this is just a really easy way to create bevels. So you can see all the edges have been beveled, and we can also increase the amount of segments to create something smoother like that. So this is just the size of that bevel. So you can increase or decrease at exactly the way you want it. And then once you are happy, you can click on the drop down apply, and that's going to apply that modifier. And now if you go into edit mode, you will see that you have all this extra geometry, extra faces, all these extra vertices that you can work with. Next, we are going to look at the subdivision surface modifier. So let's add a model that's a little bit more complex than just a normal cube. So for this, I'm going to add the monkey. And as you can see, this model is not very smooth. It's got very light jagged hard edges, and it looks very kind of low poly. So a quick way to add some smoothness to a model is to add a subdivision surface modifier. So under modifiers, we are going to select subdivision surface from the list, and instantly you can see it's smoothing out our model quite a bit. It's adding a lot more geometry because it's subdividing every face and edge, etc. to create this. Now here in the subdivision surface properties, you've got a levels for the viewport and levels for the render. So if I increase the levels in the viewport, you can actually see how it's adding more geometry or subdividing even more. Let's set this to 3, and I can see it's pretty nice and smooth. Now obviously this will add a lot more geometry to your scene, so it might slow down your scene if you go too high with this number. So be careful when you're increasing these numbers on the side. So the viewport level is only what you see in this 3D viewport, and this will not affect how your render or your final render will come out. This render number will control how the render uses this modifier. So you can set the viewport to 1 so it looks something like this. But if you render with 2 or 3 number, when you render this, it will actually come out so smooth. So it's just something to always keep in mind, that your render is the important one. The viewport is only what you see in the viewport and won't affect your render. So you can always maybe drop the viewport down a bit, so everything is nice and fast and smooth. But once you do your render, then it's going to use the render number. Another thing that you can do to smooth out objects is to change the shading from flat shading to smooth shading. So very simple to do that. You can do that even without using the subdivision surface modifier. If you have a model that's got some rounder edges, you can simply right click and select Shade Smooth. Now there you can see it's smoothing out the object, and this will not really add any more geometry. So if I apply this modifier and if I go into edit mode, you cannot see the face clearly once it's shade smooth. If I right click and say this back is shade flat, you can see that we can actually see the faces and the edges, which doesn't really look too nice. Just right click shade smooth. Now this doesn't always work with every object. Let me quickly show you what will happen if we have something like a cylinder. So cylinders got round edges and it's got sharp edges. Now if we change this to shade smooth, you can see we get something that looks a bit strange, because we are telling Blender that this object should be smooth all over. Now we want it to be smooth on the sides, but we don't want this edge at the top to be smooth as well. Easy way to fix that is to select the object, then go to this little green triangle here on the side. This is the object data properties, and then we are going to scroll down to normals and then tick the little box that says AutoSmoo. And if you tick this will actually work out the angle of these different edges. So this is a little bit more advanced. But I just want to show you guys that it is possible to shade smooth something that's got hard edges. So now we can see if I right click shade flat, you can see that's the original way it looks like. And if I right click shade smooth, it's just going to smooth the side. Because it's going to use this 30-degree angle, you can actually change this angle and you can see how it works. If we increase this to maybe above 90, you can see then we get the same effect. But if I drop this below 90, then it will know that these edges are 90 degrees edges and it will not smooth those edges. But default values is 30 and usually that gives you good results. So now let's look at the Boolean modifier. So for Boolean modifier, you always need two objects. So I'm going to create another object, Shift A, Mesh, and this time I'm going to choose cylinder. So I want to make this cylinder taller. So press S and Z to scale it on the Z axis. So we have something like this, just a cylinder kind of going through the box. So what I want to do is I want to add the Boolean modifier to the cube object. So select the cube, go to your modifiers, the little range, click on add modifier and choose Boolean. Booleans got some different functions, intersect, union and difference. So let's start with difference. This will calculate the Boolean between these two objects. So you can either just click here and select it from the drop down list, or you can click on this dropper. And then we are going to select our cylinder object right there. So you can see it's got cylinder there and now we can't really see anything happening in the viewport. But let's see what happens if we hide this cylinder from the viewport. So to hide an object, selected, press H to hide it. And now you can see we got this hole cut through our cube, and that's basically what the Boolean is. So you can also hide and unhide objects using the outline. So you can see here we got the cylinder, but it's kind of grayed out, and there's a little eye icon next to each object. So you just can click that eye to hide or unhide an object from the 3D viewport. So I can hide the cube. I can unhide the cylinder. So next to that is little camera, so that means what will be rendered. It's not gonna hide the object in the viewport, but when we later do our final render, that cylinder will not be shown in the render. I can disable it for both the viewport and the render. So if I click on this eye now, it will not show in the viewport. It will also not show once we do a render. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do there. So now we go back to Boolean modifier. So I can now go and I can maybe rotate this cylinder. So it's maybe on an angle like that, and let's hide that from the viewport and I can see how it's cutting through our cube. Another thing that we can do is let's go back to the modifier. So click on the cube and let's change this from difference to union. Let's hide this object, and now you can see even our cylinder is hidden. We can still see the cylinder because this union boolean will combine both objects into one. Now I'm going to change it to intersect. And now I can see something weird is happening here. So let's hide our cylinder from the viewport. And now I can see we only left with this part. And this is the part where both the cube and the cylinder are intersecting with each other. So intersect is where they intersect, union is to combine both, and then difference is to cut a hole. So let's say we're back to difference. we got our cylinder cutting a hole in the cube. And once you are happy with the way this looks, you can always apply this modifier. So you can click on the drop down, select, apply, and now we can literally go and we can delete our cylinder. This is basically the new object we created. So if I go into edit mode, you can see that we can now use these faces to maybe create something else. I can extrude one of these faces or whatever you want to do. And that's how to use or apply modifiers to your objects. You can see there's quite a few different modifiers that you can use. Go around, play with them, see what they do. That's the best way to learn how the modifiers work. So have fun and just go through all of them, see what they do, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.